public open comment, a nice list here. Thank you for coming. I'll start the meeting. And first on the list, I have Kathy Lucetta. Go ahead.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share tonight. I am concerned about several substances in our water, including fluoride, barium, and nitrate, that are currently tested using EPA guidelines that I do not trust. I called Mike at the Woodlands Water asking about fluoride, and he assured me that the fluoride in our water is natural. However, naturally occurring fluorides in water have wreaked havoc on tens of millions of people's health around the world. People consuming fluoride can suffer serious health ailments, including disfiguring tooth damage, bone disease, ulcers, reduced IQ, thyroid disease, and infertility. There are studies by the Fluoride Action Network that cited significantly lower IQ in children when pregnant moms drank fluoridated water. Our water tested at 0.46 from our kitchen sink, which is a little higher than the EPA amount of 0.4 mgs per liter. There are other dangerous substances that are not being tested by San Jacinto River Authority, like aluminum, glyphosate, and pharmaceuticals, among just three. There's a lot more than that. So aluminum contributes to neurodegenerative diseases, including Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, and multiple sclerosis. And that's probably just to name a few. Glyphosate, we've all heard of Roundup, has a toxic effect on neurotransmission and can induce oxidative stress. And that's another word for cancer. We have lots of cancer in our world right now. Neuroinflammation and mitochondrial dysfunction. Mitochondrial, they are very important. They are the things that kind of run our bodies. So if they don't function right, we don't function right. Plus, glyphosate has been linked to autism. Anybody noticed a huge spike in autism in the past few years? Unfortunately, many Americans tend to flush prescription drugs, and who knows what impact that is having on the quality of our water. Rainwater is another source of water quality concern. Not only is there potential runoff of glyphosate or Roundup from lawns and gardens, there appears to be increased levels of aluminum and other particulates that are potential health hazards. My husband and I are considering, and we've looked at many water filtration systems until our trust in the quality of our water coming into our home by the Woodlands Water and by association San Jacinto River Authority is elevated to a point where we're confident. This will be another expense in addition to the ridiculous water bills we currently pay. This is not acceptable from a planned development such as the Woodlands. And I respectfully request that Mud 47 leadership steps up to find ways to use more comprehensive water testing techniques. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Lucetta.
Thank you.
Next, I have Joe Lucetta.
Howdy, folks. Joe Lucetta. Kathy and I have been living in the Woodlands for over 30 years, and with the exception of 1 year, we've actually lived in Mud 47. Took a deviation for 1 year. So as residents, I'm here to talk about EMF. And one of the books that I suggest you read, if you haven't already, is a book by Dr. Joseph Mercola, an expert in the field of EMF. It's called EMF. And in his foreword, he says, the hazards of electronic pollution may once have been the stuff of science fiction, but now we know they're all too real. And with the spread of 5G ultra wideband technology, the danger is greater than ever. So you may be wondering, well, what does that have to do with mud? Well, if I think about my residence, we currently have 3 smart meters, one for electricity, one for gas, and one for water. And they're radiating microwaves. How many of you would put your hand in a microwave and turn it on? Probably no. Although I have heard of people who've used it to dry their dogs after they bathe their small dog. It's not recommended. So we've done a lot of research using this book and other references, and we've decided to have the electrical smart meter removed because it was ultra dangerous. And we had to pay for the privilege of having it removed. Can you imagine that? We decided when it was installed to live with it. After doing our research, we decided it was too dangerous for us. So I'm here to ask you folks to use your power to do some kind of research to figure out the ill effects of these meters on we the people in your community. My guess is it was driven by economics. You have thousands of meters. I don't know how many meter readers have been put out of work as a result of that. It was probably a wise decision from an economic perspective. So I'm asking that you initiate using your power to determine the ill effects, the harmful effects potentially on we the citizens. Kathy and I will probably opt out. And I hope that we don't have to pay for that privilege like we were asked to do by Entergy. We did pay that under protest. If we are asked to pay to have that smart meter, that dangerous smart meter removed, we will pay that under protest. And as co-leaders of Faith Boats, an inter-community faith-based organization that is really in place to inform and equip voters in the community, we will use whatever power we have to inform other people about these ill effects, but we're asking you to go first. You're responsible for our safety, not only providing us water, but safe water and also the safety of the environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lasetta. Next on the list, we have Mark Unland.
Good afternoon, board. I have three things I just wanted to mention to you. One is the developed district discussion last month was excellent. I really appreciate y'all diving in to understand the details on that. And I guess today we're gonna maybe put that to rest. Second, I got really excited a couple of weeks ago when I noticed some of the drainage ditches along Lake Woodlands near Shadowbend and Gosling being cleaned out. I was really excited because I thought, okay, that shows the maintenance of our drainage system is ongoing. I've since learned that that's not a mud function that's being done by the county. So got really excited. Now I'm not as excited. So I guess my concern is still there. These drainage ditches, I would think, and I don't really know what the drainage system requirements are for the Woodlands, but I would think that they require periodic clean out. I know my yard does. Leaves filled up, mud gets eroded into my yard, and periodically I have to clean out French drains and things like that. And I would hate for us to discover a problem after the next major rainstorm. So I don't know what the program is. I hope you will look into it and explain it to your residents of just what is our maintenance program for our drainage systems so that it's just as effective today as it was 30 years ago when it was created. And then the third thing, I realize there's a lot of drainage activity that's going to occur in the next 3 years or so. Mud 67's got their drainage project. The Bear Branch Dam at Kirkendall is going to get rebuilt and modified. And SJRA is planning to look at the entire drainage system all the way down to Spring Creek. And so I hope that there could be some consolidation of efforts so that if there is not already a fully defined computerized drainage plan for the Woodlands, or at least this area of the Woodlands, that through this consolidated effort, you can come up with that. Something that, you know, I can look at Entergy's electrical system, you know, online. I can look at the water system. What is the drainage system and how does it perform in the middle of a storm? And will it perform well when we have the bigger storms that are projected to occur? So use this activity as a way to get to this better defined and hopefully better drainage system.
Thank you, Mr. Unland. Darlene Bonniwell. Okay, thank you for coming though. Sue Ellen Myers. Okay, thanks for coming. All right, that concludes public comment. Next on the agenda is number 3, consider an act on requests for adjustments. Do we have any adjustments? No? Okay, then we have the consent agenda. These are items that are usually not controversial or anything, and I usually seek a motion to approve the consent agenda, but I do want to pull out number 4. That is the review of the board minutes from last meeting. And on that, page 2, there is a reference to a written statement. Did we get that? Is that going to be in the meeting minutes? Second, under consent agenda, it says that Director Nelson abstained and he's from MUD 7. And then on number 13, it says review and discuss the drought contingency plan. And then the contents under that title is a discussion about the Spring Creek drainage study. And then under item 18, there was a discussion of the trustee agenda and their vote on whether to have our meetings recorded. And I thought that was not a unanimous vote. Am I incorrect? I'm not sure about that.
No, you're right.
Okay, so we'll change that to be, I think it's MUD 36 and Metro said no. So anyway, that's with those changes. I would be happy to entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll move to approve
Okay,
with changes.
all righty.
No second.
Second. Okay, all in favor?
Right.
All right. Regular agenda, review the district's draft fiscal year 22-23 operating budget and recommended water rate structure. What do we have on board there?
So you should have this in your packet, with a memorandum, draft budget, the front and back cover. Line item definitions of budget numbers. Typical fee schedule for different size meters that we provide. Tax administration fee schedule, and then a typical 2023 residential customer usage price comparison for proposed rates. The budget is for review and discussion, no action needed tonight. We do ask that you take a look at the budget, and if there's questions that come up after the meeting, please email them to either myself or Maureen, Jim even, and we'll get them answered for everybody at on the board. We did notice an error typo under the budget memorandum, second page. Very bulk and MUD retail water and sewer rates. The last sentence, we are budgeting a residential sewer increase from 485 to 553, not 853. So just the typo.
Oh, I see right there.
It's like the last sentence there, so please correct that. As you know, we've got a 50-50 groundwater surface water blend this year, up from a 65-35 blend last year. The SGRA, the surface water conversion fee is just a pass-through fee for that water. The blend fee results in a surface water conversion fee of $320, so that will be passed through to the customer. That's up from $303 last year. I'll answer questions. The administrative fee is kind of the big item. It's going up 30%. In your packet, it gives you the typical reasons why. We can go through that if you'd like. Yeah. Basically, we've got the main expenses include employee salaries and expenses. legal fees, fuel, software maintenance and licensing, that's going up $145,000. TAP fees are down. The district's not budgeting any TAPs for this year. So it's a reduction of 56,000. But again, it's for review and discussion tonight, no action necessary. That's kind of the short story version. I'll take questions if you have them now, or we'll take them anytime over the next 30 days. So what we'll do tonight is discuss the budget if there's any discussion. David is here to talk about our tax rate recommendation in accordance with the budget that's proposed tonight.
David, is that the gentleman next to Mr.
Yeah,
Adlin?
David
Okay.
Williams, RW Baird.
Okay.
If there's any questions on the budget, I'll take those. Maureen and I can try to answer those now. And if there's nothing tonight, we'll go to the tax rate discussion.
Very good. Okay, let's do that. Go ahead.
W. Baird, pleasure to be at your meeting tonight to talk about your tax rate for the 2022 tax year. Our tax rate recommendation is in your packet, and I say it's our recommendation because we've been working with staff and legal counsel to come up with this recommendation that we have before you tonight. And before we dig into the numbers, just a quick review on the process that we go through each year to set your tax rate. It's a two-step process. Today is step one, where we are really just looking at the total tax rate that we'll include in our notice of public hearing that we'll publish before next month's meeting. And at next month's meeting, we'll conduct a public hearing. We'll formally levy the tax for this particular tax year. But with that said, what's most important tonight is the total tax rate, because that's what goes into the notice of public hearing. And although I'll talk about, the total tax rate and the two components that we're proposing to make up that total, again, just really want to stress that the total is what's most important. And then once we go to the meeting, decide on the rate that's published. Once we have our meeting next month and conduct that public hearing, the rate that's in the notice is the maximum that we can levy, right? So what's decided tonight is the maximum. We can levy that, or anything below next month's meeting. So with that said, let's look at our recommendation here. What starts this process every year? If you look at the first sentence of the first paragraph, we receive new taxable values from the Montgomery Central Appraisal District. We receive those values in two components as usual. We receive one value that's assigned to properties that have made their way through the protest process. We kind of call that a certified value. And that's the large number that you see at the front of the second line there. It's about $2.6 billion. We also receive a separate amount. That's our estimate of the taxable value that for properties that are still under protest, right? So they haven't quite made their way through the appraisal reward review. And we have a number there for those properties, about $82.6 million. That $82.6 million represents the 2021 taxable value of those properties that remain under protest for this year. So a conservative estimate. So in any case, we sum those two numbers to arrive at a 2022 net taxable value for the district of about $2.679 billion. That represents a 16.75% increase over last year's, the 2021 taxable value of about $2.294 billion. So a good amount of growth in taxable value in the district year over year. With last year's value, we levied a total tax rate of 20.925 cents. And of that, 9.25 cents went to debt service, and the remainder, 11.675 cents went to maintenance and operation. For this year, with our new values, what we're recommending is a total tax rate of 19.5098 cents in total. Of that, we're recommending a debt service tax rate of 9.25 cents, same as last year. And then the remainder, maintenance tax of 10.2598 cents. So that's a 1.415 cent reduction over last year's total rate, and all of that, 1.14152 cents is coming off the maintenance and operations side. And so we have these recommendations with, they go out to 6 decimal places because largely part of Senate Bill 2 and the property tax legislation that was passed in 2019. Understand we had a good bit of discussion last month's meeting about this district being a developed district and what that means for your ability to generate additional revenues for this particular tax year. And our recommended total is the maximum rate that you can levy as a developed district. And that's the tax rate that generates 3.5% increase in the tax bill of the average homestead. So we can get into that a little bit more in detail here in a second, but wanted to review with you the debt service side of the recommendation, the 9.25 cents. This is the same debt service rate as we levied last year. Again, that debt service cash flow is page 2 of the recommendation. Cash flow reads left to right, top to bottom. If you look towards the top left, you'll see we have a beginning debt service fund balance of about $3 million as of the end of June. From there, we add on just a bit of interest earnings in the fund, and then we subtract out your 9/1/22 principal and interest payment of about $2.5 million. You can see that in the current debt service column. So that leaves us with a calendar year end balance of about $534,000. So then we carry that into the second row of the analysis here. This is when we start to generate some tax revenues, to pay additional debt service payments, right? So we have our new taxable value, the 2.679 billion, and a tax rate, proposed tax rate of 9.25 cents on debt service at 99% tax collections generates about $2.453 million of debt service tax revenues to pay your principal and interest payments, which in total next calendar year about $2.35 million. So that gets us to that ending fund balance at the end of next year of about $655,000, which is 30% of the following years after that debt service obligation. So it's really that debt service coverage side on the far right that we're looking to target. We want to keep around 25% at the bare minimum. Since last year we dipped below that a little bit. So, but if we levy the 9.25 cents again this year, our coverage should be around 30%, and that gets us back in a good place. You'll also notice going forward, these are discussions for future tax years, but I will point out that we do show your debt service tax rate, assuming no growth in taxable value beyond 2022. It does go down year over year, and of course, as do your debt service obligations. So that's the story on the debt service side of the recommendation. And the maintenance component is, as I mentioned earlier, this difference between the proposed total, which is a function of the property tax rules, right? So the total, excuse me, of 19.5098. Delta there leaves 10.2598 cents for maintenance and operation. That maintenance and operation rate at 99% tax collections generates about $2.7 million in operating revenues for your budget. That amount is relatively flat to what y'all had for maintenance revenues last year. So last year you had about 2.65 million in maintenance tax revenue, so maybe about $70,000 increase year over year in maintenance taxes. And so yeah, all the numbers as far as maintenance tax comparisons are on the top box of 3 under the cash flow. The middle box there gives some information about what the proposed tax rate means for the average homestead. Right? So for 2021 tax year, the average homestead value was just under $300,000. And based on last year's tax rate, that generated a bill for the average homestead of $627. This year, as is the case everywhere, property values are up. So the average homestead has increased to $332,000. And with our new slightly lower tax rate proposed for 2022, that equates to a 3.5% increase in the bill on the average homestead, or a $22 increase year over year from last year. If you're that person who has that average homestead over those 2 years. So of course, that 3.5% increase calculation is crucial for the developed district classification and Senate Bill 2 rules that I mentioned earlier. All those numbers there are in the bottom box of the 3. I'll point you to the second to bottom row, tax rate to avoid a rollback election, 19.5098. Well, that's the total rate that we're proposing today, because that's the maximum rate that we can levy without having to have an election to get voter approval to approve a higher rate. So that is the story on our recommendations this year. I'm happy to answer any questions, but
Minor question. I saw this 22.8%
Yeah.
for debt service. Is that in red just because it's less than the 30%?
it's less than the 25, and so our cash flows just kind of call that out. So yeah, we want to
Okay,
keep.
I just want to make sure I understood.
Yeah, we want to keep it 25%. Got a little low that last year, but we can build it up again this year.
Approximately, and this isn't for you, but how much does it cost to have an election for a MUD our size?
I think the last go around, unfortunately, was pushing up around 40 grand.
Okay.
So just to kind of do a little bit of clarifying and maybe step back for just a second. So as David mentioned, the recommendation is based on the district's designation as a developed district. We had a lot of discussion, as you all recall,
Yeah.
last month. And where we left it was, looked like we were going the developed district status route. Hugh, I believe, had asked for some additional information from Donnie, who is here tonight. And so I think procedurally, before we give the authorization to publish a notice, we need to formally make that determination. So that's the item before the recommendation item. So we probably need to
Hold off on this.
hold off on publishing the rate until you formally make your designation on the developed district status. So I'll go ahead and just kind of pause there. Donnie's here to answer any questions y'all have. He did provide an updated Exhibit A that has the backup there at the top. The ultimate and active sections, it looks like this is pushing over Donnie a little bit over the 95. Yes, sir. So that would put y'all at developed. And we talked about going conservative because we're right on the razor edge. And so this would be going that conservative route, designating you as a developed district, which in turn subjects you to the 3.5% rollback rate instead of the 8% rollback rate, as well as subjects you to an automatic election if you go over 3.5, as opposed to taxpayers having to petition to force an election if you go over 8%. So it's a consequential determination, but based on the information from your engineer, that will be the designation to adopt the resolution designating the district as a developed district for 2022.
Okay, so then let's evaluate that. Donnie, you want to go ahead? That's agenda item number 9, right? Yeah,
Let's have any questions.
Okay.
What I did before I said, I was just conservative in the number of connections that the Woodlands had talked about for that commercial development, right off of 1488.
Yeah.
Like with Chris, he had the numbers in there, when they did their numbers with the 6 and final counting. Like I said, I wanted to be conservative to give you that. When we went back and looked at it, it was included, so that puts us at over 95%.
okay. Thank you. Yes, we have been over this. I think this is the 3rd time for this to hit our agenda, right on? So do I have any questions or comments on this subject before calling a vote? Okay, do I have a motion to pass us as a developed district? Okay,
Yeah, second.
all right, we are now developed and we're at our 3.5. Thank you. Is that what it-
Motion second.
Oh, yes, yeah, all in favor? Sorry.
Formality, but.
Okay,
Okay, now y'all can take action on your publishing notice. So as David mentioned, I know, we are going through this for, Big Tom, she's not here today, but we want to go ahead and take a few minutes to go through this. So all we're doing today is publishing the notice, and it has to be in a newspaper of general circulation in the county. So we end up publishing in the Cotton Row Courier. Some boards, even though they're not legally required to do so, decide to also provide additional notice, whether it's through your website or bill stuffer or through an email blast to let folks know that you are going to be considering your tax rate next month. You're not legally required to do any of that, but some boards do. That's up to y'all. That's a policy decision. But you do need to give that notice, and what that means is that your next meeting, you would conduct a public hearing and then receive any comments that may be provided. And then once you close that public hearing, you'll have discussion at the board level about the tax rate. You can go under what you published, but you cannot go over. So that you do kind of tie your hands as a governing body of going over that number that you publish without having to reboot the whole process, republish notice, new public hearing, et cetera, et cetera. So our suggestion to boards is always, if you're not sure what rate you want to adopt, go with the higher of the possible options and then take it up next month and then make the decision. But you've given yourself the flexibility to have that conversation versus already having it locked in when you publish. So happy to answer the questions y'all got. David did a great job of going through the numbers.
yes, thank you. All right, do we have a motion to post our tax rate? That's what it's called. We're not adopting it just yet. We're just posting it.
Right.
Do I have a motion? Yes. Okay,
Second.
all right, thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Publishing the 950.
Recommended right.
Yes.
Okay, next on the agenda is item 11, the SJRA report.
I do not have anything of a general nature. If you have any questions, I can cover that, but if you don't have any questions, I'm gonna turn it over to the folks that'll take more time than me. So, Dan,
Good evening, everybody, and I guess just for the record, those in the audience that may not know me, I'm Dan Hildebrand. I'm the engineering manager at San Jacinto River Authority. So real quick update tonight on the wastewater strategic plan. In your packet, I believe it's page 33. There is a meeting summary of the meeting that progress meetings with SBA and our consultant that took place on July 27th. It gave us a chance to really kind of reconvene as a group, make sure everybody is on the same page on the approach moving forward. The short list of alternatives that we discussed for the stakeholder group, which led into more detailed conversation on the cost analysis aspect of how we move forward over the next few months of developing either life cycle costs or what assumptions go into the cost analysis in terms of inflation, in terms of we look at, how we look at bond financing over a 50-year planning horizon, to really be able to present to the stakeholders, essentially the MUDs, a way to compare these shortlisted alternatives. Because just as a reminder, cost is currently 92% of the weighted evaluation criteria. So that is a key aspect that we want to focus on. What different metrics we could utilize to present that? Like I said, is it long-term bond financing? Is it bringing it to some more realistic percent increase or cost per 1,000 gallons on a customer bill? Whatever that may be, we have to started those discussions. We have met actually today with the financial advisors to get some input from them on just how we be consistent in the presentation. Also, while taking in the back of our minds, we have hundreds of millions of dollars on the water side too. So being somehow consistent in a way to present both sides in a big picture, because there is going to be a lot of decisions for long-term renewal replacement or the asset in the woodlands. So that is currently what we are engaged in. Our consultants is really working through cost estimating aspect for the alternatives. Two other things that have come up. The next stakeholder meeting is scheduled for November 8th. It was brought to our attention that is election day. So we are working to find a new date for that. Currently probably looking at the week before. So it'd be the first week in November. So Paul, that's something you might get some notice on here. The second item is we've had a couple stakeholder members request a kind of interim stakeholder meeting prior to that November one, where the last one we had was back in July, and between July and November is a pretty good gap. So that is something else that has come up that, Paul, we'd like your input on if you see value in, or what kind of things we could discuss if we had a interim stakeholder meeting, say late September or early October or something like that. So you may get some notice on that also. Would love to hear your feedback together.
I do have since our last meeting, I've been thinking about it. It'd be great if, there's a technology on here, MBR, that is really, it seems to me, and I could be wrong about this, obviously, but, the question is, should we be going there in the future? What are the positives? What are the negatives of both approaches? And I think considering, obviously, there's a cost differential there, right? As I understand it.
Yeah.
And considering that this is a, 50-year project, right? And the life cycle is probably a lot longer than that. Based upon choices, it would be great if, there could be a sponsored meeting to explain the current way we cleanse sewerage and the MBR way. And, for the, at least for all of the board members here in the Woodlands, if they want to attend. Because I think it's, it just struck me as I thought through the meeting that it's going to be a core cost driver probably, but it also, after I've done a bunch of reading on this, it's probably all about the future. So I'd like to suggest that be offered up if anybody wants to attend, but at least I think it should be offered up.
Thank you, Paul.
Any other questions?
No.
I do think.
I've got the next three bullet items. My name is Nate Shuckett, Board Director, Utility Operator, in Center River Authority. The update on the infrastructure funding, we're still waiting to hear if Congressman Crenshaw's bill for earmarks is moving forward in the House and the Senate. Haven't heard anything yet, but just to refresh memories, he's attempting to get the Woodlands $3.6 million to help with the Bear Branch Dam replacement, remodel, rehabilitation. Bear Branch Dam repairs, the third bullet point. If you recall, we had some minor repairs that needed to be accomplished. A contractor moved in early July and started working. He has done the majority of the work that was in the original bid package. We have found from that there are some overruns on joint sealing because there was an area of the spillway that had been, when it was originally investigated, was covered with water and covered with about 8 to 9 inches of sand under the water. So since the drought, the water's gone, sand's been scooped up and moved. So we've got an overrun on joint sealing. If you remember, there were some voids under the concrete that were originally identified. Those have been filled. Took a little more material than originally anticipated, not a huge amount, but during a pre-final inspection, they found a couple other voids, and we authorized the contractor to go in and fill them. So to bring you up to date, the original bid amount was $107,000. We think with the original overruns plus these new expenses, we think we're going to be at a total of about $165,000. Your budget, or what we had budgeted for the project, was $150,000. So any additional funds over the 150 would come out of the monies that we had projected as a carryover from FY22 into FY23. And so that original carryover was estimated around 101,000. So that money, additional money would come out of 101,000. Any questions on that project?
No, but I'll just make a comment to everyone here, mostly Mud 47 residents, that we are 51% of the cost sharing on that dam maintenance and
Pretty good.
repair. Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
The last one, Bear Branch Dam low flow vault. I had mentioned to you at the last board meeting in talking about the Bear Branch budget that there was a security and safety concern with that vault hatch. We did some, Mud 60 had asked that we do some investigating about possibly putting the safety grate in first and then coming back and doing a hatch. There's not much difference in delivery time. And if you put the safety grate in first, you would have to pull that out, put the hatch in, and then reinstall the grate. So there's not an advantage time-wise, cost-wise, in moving forward. We just need to move forward on the whole thing and get it done.
Good show.
Any questions? Yes, sir.
What's our backup plan to the Crenshaw plan?
The backup plan would be what we had originally identified as find funding through the Water Development Board to defund low interest loan monies or and the
So
final mark.
are we running that on a parallel basis? Or?
Yes.
So you're working on that, Crenshaw's working on the other?
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to just comment on, at the last meeting, we talked about, one of our board members mentioned concerns about the fencing, safety, et cetera. And I just thought, I don't know where that is or how that's being considered, but I went by the dam 2 days ago. And there were some very young children in that area on top of the dam. They looked to be in the single digit range in terms of age. They also looked to be with some other kids who were probably teenagers. But I just figured I'd mention it because it's, I'd never seen kids like that before, that young, out there on the dam. So I don't know.
Well, and Brian had mentioned to me about your old son call. And one of the things that we had talked about when discussing the Bear Branch budget was to monitor intrusions, repairs, that sort of thing during this next fiscal year so that we can come back to you at a later date. So kind of give you an idea of what kind of occurrences and incidents we've had. You know, one is, it's always been repairing the fence. The other is Bob Lutz reported some graffiti, recent graffiti. So we've taken care of the graffiti today, but we're starting the log to track all of that. So we can keep you all apprised monthly, quarterly basis. And then we'll evaluate and bring you a recommendation next budget year on whether to go with lights and cameras.
So do we have integrity on the fencing right now?
We do,
Okay, so there's no
but it's
breaks.
a constant, every time we go out, we find someplace where it's been cut and we're constantly repairing.
I'll just ask another question because maybe right now it doesn't matter. Is there any water in that dam?
I think there's water in the upstream side.
Okay.
I haven't been out to look to see how deep, but there's probably a little.
Thank you.
Other question? That concludes our report.
All right,
Thank
thank
y'all.
you. Next on the agenda is the attorney's report.
No general legal issues to report to y'all.
Okay. Next is the status of the annexation of the 6-acre tract on 1488 and any action.
No, still looking like we'll probably be trying to come up with a different arrangement for that than an annexation. There's been a lot going on at city council, as you may have seen in the current. So.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Okay.
So we've had discussions with the city about the annexation for another district in the Woodlands. That's a pretty straightforward one, same ETJ, et cetera. And it's still, we're supposed to consider those within around, I think it's 90 days under the statute, and we're well past that. I did hear from their community development director today that they're hoping to have that on the agenda in September. So there's not even plain vanilla annexations are taking a really long time. This one, as we mentioned before, is very complicated, and my outcome on the likelihood of this being approved is pretty low. Because again, we talked about it would be allowing this district to annex property in a different ETJ. And I just don't have a lot of optimism that the city is going to be supportive of that. But, you know, still going to, when I can get their attention on it, we'll talk to them about that issue.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
We can leave that, so we can leave this on the agenda if you want to, or take it off. There's not going to be.
I'd like to take it off unless there's something that you want to.
And I can cover that on the attorney's report if we have anything. And if we end up doing an out-of-district service agreement, like we talked about as another alternative for fee in lieu of taxes, that's not going to come up until the landowner, the development company is ready to do a project on that property where they would need water sewer service. So I don't anticipate that being a short-term issue for coming up with the out-of-district service agreement. So I don't think we need to keep it on there as a standing item.
Right. Yeah. The way I see it, if someone were interested in this subject, they've got to come every month to look at that and hear that we have no new news.
Correct.
And then just go home. So, yeah, I'm all for the taking off, what is this month, number 13, and don't put it on until we have a presentation or some movement on that.
Okay.
Thank you. So next on the agenda is number 14, discussion regarding designation of records retention schedule for video recordings of board meetings. Authorize any action in connection therewith. So would anyone else like to start? Because I have a strong opinion on this one. I don't want to be a heavy. Any
No, what do you
comments on
think?
this? Well, we have 4-year terms. And that means that if we want to run for reelection, we might want to go out to the videos, maybe remember a specific video that you want to use in your campaign. You want to take a cut out of that. And if we don't retain them any more than 2 years, which is some other board suggested 2 years, the video might be gone. So for that reason, I'd like at least 4 years for us to retain them. And I have no problem with it being a completely free retention thing as far as to keep it out on YouTube. As long as you're not saying something false, YouTube won't take your channel down. It's been my experience. So I would propose something at 4 years or longer.
4 years sounds fine. I wouldn't go any longer than that because it's just gonna
Okay,
take up data space.
all right.
I don't feel strongly either way. I do like the 4-year idea.
Okay, so can I make a motion then to pass a 4-year records retention on our recordings?
So, I think we would, well, and it may not be maybe a non-issue, but make sure that, Maureen, that you could do that separately for MUD 47 versus the other ones. Because there's in the agreement, and it wasn't a particular MUD, just to be fair, it wasn't a particular MUD that suggested 2 years. That was actually me. And the reason was the statute just required 90 days, or not the statute, the records retention schedule from the Texas State Library and Archives Commission only requires 90 days after the date that the minutes are approved. I put in 2 years because I thought that's a whole lot longer than 90 days and thought that was a reasonable period of time. And so that's what got put into the contract between MUD 47 and Woodlands Water. If it's a non-expense or if there is an incremental expense, that can be separately charged back to MUD 47. So it's not being charged to Woodlands Water as a whole, because what the agreement said was that Woodlands Water would own, operate, et cetera, the system going forward. So if there's some kind of incremental cost that Maureen could tease out and bill back to 47, and y'all can keep just these recordings for a longer period of time, then I think that's fine. Otherwise, we have to go do an amendment to the agreement. I don't think that's really worth the effort unless y'all really want to go.
Well, I think there's something I don't know about how much it costs to store.
It will be nominal
Okay, cool.
for extra storage.
Yeah, I bet you're cheaper. I pay Apple $3 a month for storing things, but, okay, so,
Well, I'll move that we do
Okay.
retain for 4 years.
Swift, okay, I'll second it. All in favor?
Yep.
Okay. Next on the agenda is number 15, discuss policy RNS 14, special handling or adjustment of customer accounts. So for the audience, the third item we had on our agenda, right? That's our request for adjustments. We have that on our agenda every month, and sometimes people come before us and ask for relief from their water bill because they accidentally left it on. And we have a policy on how to address that, and that's what's the subject of this discussion. So it looks like you're ready, Mike. Go ahead.
Well, I guess you put it on the agenda, so
Yeah.
policy is the policy. Do you all
All
want
right.
to change the policy? Do you all want to get rid of the policy?
Of course, I have an
It
opinion.
hasn't been a big issue for us. We approve everything under $1,000. You're allowed, all customers are allowed a one-time unexplained usage adjustment. Most of the adjustments are for what Laura said. Somebody left the hose on, or somebody's auto pool fill got stuck, toilet flapper got stuck, with the AMI meters, that they should be getting alerts, even if they don't know where the leak is, they should be getting alerts that something's going on.
Right, right. And it's working. I do get alerts.
Yeah.
This summer, I've been trying to keep the bushes alive. And I am getting alerts. So in light of the fact that we have AMI meters, I would like to close our policy, not completely. As we saw in our packet, we had a resident who was hospitalized for some 3 months, and he had a leaking toilet. And our policy does have something in it about hospitalization at the bottom of page 50. I don't know where it starts. I have underlined after, yeah, extraordinary circumstances beyond the reasonable control of the customer, including but not limited to the death, that's pretty unfortunate, extended illness or disability, or hospital confinement of the customer. Then the next thing there, it gets a little wordy. And I was thinking we could end that sentence there. Bottom of page 50 on the paper version of our.
Before we move on, could we just get some data here?
Oh, yeah.
Number one, how many people have signed up and, get notices when there's a problem?
Everyone that we have an email address for gets a notice. So that's about 21,000 customers.
So they're all getting notices into their email. That's 21,000 out of how many?
32. So like 2/3.
Right.
We could communicate that.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I think we need to, communicate, remind people this functionality is available, remind people that they will be getting, if they're signed up and require what it requires to do that. We should put something together and get it out to these folks. I don't know whether we do it with, well, you can only do it electronically with the email folks. You got to do it a different way with the other folks, right?
I put it on the bill or
Or
something.
we should, I think we should give them notice.
Right. I like
And then-
that.
And then we should keep an open policy for special cases. I mean, we may have some customers who, don't have any access to electronics or don't use electronics. I mean,
In our budget, that's already budgeted, and we're planning on doing it next month. We're sending out a second welcome letter to WaterSmart, one by mail to all the people we do not have email addresses for, because we can filter those real easily. And then a reminder via email to all the ones we do have email addresses for that have not registered.
I guess I just think that if we're gonna put that if we're gonna change a policy like this, number one, we need to retain the ability to make exceptions to the policy. And then number two, probably as part of that, we ought to tell the customers that, the following items are not, typically good reasons to request a refund.
Yeah, well, I don't know that we have to go down that,
Well, maybe we shouldn't. but-
Pandora's box.
but, I mean, well, you essentially, I don't think you should do it in the dark. That's what I mean.
Right. I'm with you. I think we've got this new communications guy, John Geiger, and we could ask him in the course of the next month to send out a missive electronically that says, we've got this AMI meter, let me introduce you to it, and pay attention to your emails, that kind of thing. And I do want to keep the structure of the policy. It starts on page 50. And, section C, discounted amount, it starts to go through what the general manager can do. And I like the wording. I'm glad that the situation in our packet that variance, I like to call it, was granted. And it sounded reasonable. The man was in the hospital. I can understand that. And if you're in the hospital and you're elderly, you're probably not, like you said, connected to the internet and that kind of communication. So I'm all for keeping that. And so what I'd like us to do as a board is really read this policy and think of where is it in this policy that allows someone to come in here that we've had in the past and seemingly know the policy and really take advantage of it. And they strike me as, some of them do, they know the situation, they can take advantage of it, they can get a variance on $1,000 water bill plus. And the issue I have is really the financial burden for that variance that we grant is borne by all MUD 47 residents. And so with our AMI, I want to close the loophole a little bit. And when we have a disaster like a hurricane that blows over trees and breaks pipes, that's understandable. When we have Uri happen and water's coming down in your living room, I get it. You know, we have to be reasonable. We don't have to be. We want to be an understanding board and things like that. But that I really want us to read this and literally come up with changes. Maybe I was getting down in the details too much, but if we could put this on the agenda again, and I would like for us to move forward with communicating to our residents. We have these AMI meters. We bought them not just smart. The fact that they're smart and that meter reading infrastructure almost gives us real time. You know, what is it? Twice a day, there's a data feed that allows us to, yeah. So we know quickly that we have a leak, and I've been getting the notices.
So nobody in my neighborhood knows about these meters. And I think there needs to be an education, and a lot of the residents, if you don't have or you don't have access to that email address, I'm wondering, you know, you're going to get your water bill. Why can't you just have like a little insert, a little flyer in there saying, hey, this new technology has been in, this is what it can do, this is what it can't do. You know, because everyone I talk about, all they're doing is, and there's something wrong with the meter and that, and just, you know, go lifting the lid and looking at it, and they don't know any difference.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
if we've gone through the expense of putting all of this stuff in, I think we should be educating the people, at least in MUD 47, of this is what it is, this is what it can do. You know, and at that point, I mean, are there any options that, I mean, some of them may just like, hey, my email is sacred. I don't want to get emails from you, you know, but there might be a whole lot of people out there that just have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, I agree. So it sounds like we've all discussed something about communicating to residents. So let's look to direct staff to have John Geiger send out an email to MUD 47 residents that discusses the capabilities of AMI and how
What
it
about
can.
for those that don't have emails? Can
Well,
we,
right, we'll pursue these other,
yeah,
do it
snail
by mail.
mail or something, you know?
Yes, like she suggested.
It's already in the budget.
Okay, because
Yeah.
I'm here to tell you, it's like, I mean, we saw the trucks coming through and installing them, you know, and people asked me and I was like, well, I guess the old ones were leaking and they're putting new ones in. But if it has all these other features and that, it's just kind of, what is this? Who's the manufacturer? Is there things that people would be concerned about? Is there a way that I don't want any part of this, take this thing out of my yard? I mean, there needs to be an education of our consumer here.
Okay, so we'll pursue that, the
Cool.
education, and
I do have one
yeah.
question. How many adjustments under $1,000 do we make every month? I mean, is it like 150? Just
I just remember MUD 46 for July was
So
two.
just one out of everybody?
okay, so it's not like we're doing 20 or 30 a month.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Maybe entire Woodlands, maybe.
Oh, okay,
For
okay.
each district, it's under 5.
Oh, okay. I was kind of getting the idea it was much more
Yeah, and
significant.
just to clarify, so I think Laura brings up a good point about the language in here and discretion. Just to clarify, that's discretion by the general manager, and I think that discretion, Mike, what you're saying, has been exercised much less because we've got AMI and we can
Yeah.
tell people. Before they'd say, oh, I had a leak, and it was, all you have are monthly usage numbers, and so you don't have data to go and show, well, actually, you were using it during this time or whatever, so we're not going to exercise our discretion to give you relief. Where before we had the meters, I think because of the lack of data, there was more leeway given to the requester to make more adjustments. So there may be a way, because these policies as y'all know, are uniform policies that all the MUDs adopt. And staff has worked really hard to have them be uniform, so we don't have carve outs and have 10 different ones. So if there's a way that we could incorporate maybe some direction from the board in exercising the discretion, we don't technically have to go have a carve out for MUD 47 versus the other MUDs, but you can give direction to the general manager on how to exercise that discretion for MUD 47. Y'all can think about that and talk about what that direction would be.
Yeah, and we research every one that calls. It says I had a toilet problem, will show us the repair bills. We don't just say, oh, okay. We get repair bill, we get photographs, we get.
You don't make it super easy to
No, we do not.
get a free water bill. Thank you.
That was my concern, was that, oh, hey, my bill's too high. Okay, here's an adjustment.
Right. Automatic grant.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you have anyone on the help desk looking at the system as a whole? Does that exist? Did we
Yeah,
implement
we
it?
do check,
Okay, so I guess the other question I have is, if there's extraordinary activity on the part of a property, okay, it can be an alarm, right? Or an outbound phone call and door.
we actually go out and check out, see if there's
Okay.
something wrong with the meter. I
Good.
found one today, actually. It was extreme. It's probably a wrong reading.
Mhm. I was just curious thinking about this. What's the average number of toilets in a house? Let's say 3,
Two or
Probably
three.
3.
3. Then, and if you have one of those toilets leaking for an entire month, it's going straight down into the sewer unknown to the resident because he's not paying attention to his email and doesn't get it. How much would that cost? Just one toilet leak?
If it's leaking, just leaking for 10 days, it can use over 100,000 gallons
Wow.
right down the sewer.
That's incredible.
I'm
Okay.
thinking, when we run sprinklers, we get a notice within 12 hours that we use all this water.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's a week or a massive delay.
Yeah, love it. Very good. So we'll push this to next month and we'll think about, read the policy. Literally come with your contributions to what you might strike out or what you demand to keep. Like, yeah, if somebody died, I don't know that we need to charge the estate or be creeps and stuff. So, we'll be real and we'll push it to next month. Thank you. The next item is the GM report.
Not a whole lot, just a couple of things. In the packet, there's a couple of good complimentary letters for one of our customer accounts representatives, Margot. And we always appreciate getting those, especially the people that take the time to write the letters and fax them in or email them in. So the other thing is, I was just giving updates on Jim. He is at home doing physical therapy. He's still not authorized to drive and still not released to come back to work, although he did come back last Friday for Bob Daly's retirement party. Gave a nice speech for Bob. Just says he feels good. I talk to him every day. He's really pretty bored sitting at home, but the physical therapist comes a couple times a day and it works him out and he's pretty sore after it. So he is recovering, but it's just slow.
So familiar with that surgery. I'm lucky I haven't had it, but my husband has had several spine surgeries.
Anything else in the report? I'd be glad to answer questions if you have.
Trustees report, Hugh isn't here. He is our trustee and he was at the meeting. Luckily, we recorded the trustee meeting and it's out on woodlands1water.com. But any questions, I did watch it. Next on the agenda is recess to close session.
Not necessary today.
Okay. That strikes 19 then, which is reconvene. And I have an agenda item here, review information prepared by MUD 46 Director Fred Letterman. I just really, in putting that in your packet, I wanted you guys to be able to see it. There's some legal issues perhaps when I take an email and send it to the rest of this board, even if I make it a one-way communication by blind copying you. It's better for me to put it in the packet so that everyone can read it. So it's in there. The fruits of Fred Letterman's email are, he is going to get an audience with the SJRA's legal counsel with the individuals that he selects to attend it. So anyway, any questions on that? No. Okay, this is a new agenda item for us tonight. We have a beginning public comment and a closing comment, like I was discussing out in the lobby this evening, that the Commissioners Court does. So is there a second public comment? And if you would like to, just raise your hand and I'll call on you. Mr. Unland.
I just want to make one little comment. Thank you. It was a great meeting. But apparently a thief has stolen all the Bud 47 packets. And so I don't know what security we have, but in the future, it's very hard to follow the meeting when y'all are saying at the bottom of page 50 and at the top, you know, we've got no clue. So up to security, so we can figure out what's going on.
Christmas came early.
We noticed that.
Yeah, I know. We're just,
So I'm gonna steal some of the others.
Well, we had a lot of POC, so that's good. Oh, was,
yeah. Someone's gonna come to tomorrow's meeting and have our agenda. Yeah, I know this. All right.
okay, anyone else? No.
So I got one. Can I just
Yeah.
throw it? Okay, so I've got a couple of people, constituents, and that are kind of a little bit on the water crazy side. I mean, I've got this one neighbor down the street from me, and she buys bottled water for her dogs because she doesn't believe in the quality of the water. Do y'all have a report that I could access that just shows everything that's in the water, and I can convince her that it's okay for your dogs to be drinking this, and you probably can drink this water too, because she's told me all of these things that are in there. And then she complains about her water bill and she goes, but look at the price of Ozarka. I was like,
Yeah.
well, let me see if I can get
I
some
think
clarification.
Mr.
for
Mooney
you.
has a response.
Yes.
We could just put that out.
We did. We put out the consumer confidence report, but we also have a separate report we can give you that tests for a lot of the secondary items that are
Right.
required.
Right, because she's thinking like her dog's gonna get tumors. I was
Yeah,
like, no,
no,
wait,
it's-
let me
I
see
want
this.
everyone to know,
Yeah.
here and there, I drink gallons of this stuff a day, straight from the tap.
How healthy she is, you know?
Straight.
Nah, I got zero water, so.
2 years.
But I mean, if you could, because we're having a little block party and I know the word's got around all again at Hollow and that, and they're just, oh, we really want to know what's in this. So
Yep.
You-
I'll send it to you.
that'd be perfect. Thank you.
I'll just add, there's a website, the TCQ Texas Drinking Water Watch.
Uh-huh.
It's a very good one to go on to. It's everything that TCQ tests, everything we test.
Okay.
So you can go into it.
Better, yeah.
Yeah, you can put it in Mud 47 and it's up to the minute. You don't have to call Mike, say, send me a report.
Okay.
Information TCQ.
Drinking water
TCQ test.
Okay, so it's
Drinking water watch.
TCEQ,
Drinking
drinking
water
water
watch.
watch.com.
I just typed that in Google and it takes.
Yeah, that's not the website, but it'll take you to it. If you
Okay.
Google that, it'll take you
Okay.
to it.
If you lose that piece of paper, you can watch a recording of this and they can really hear our.
That's
voices
true.
well. Hi, everyone.
Yeah. Diane said, you know,
Anyway,
hello, Hugh, why didn't you come today? No, just kidding. I know you're in Colorado.
so,
No, this is something that I could give out to all of the neighbors and they could go type that in too and up to the minute.
public. Mhm.
Oh, love it. This is gonna make all my neighbors real happy.
Yeah.
Extra ribs for me.
Number 22 is discuss any matters for placement on a future agenda. Does anyone have anything?
Yes, I had an item. I was out looking at drainage ditches yesterday on my mountain bike. And I know we're gonna start mowing, I think it's 25th.
Yeah, we started yesterday.
But it just seems in a drought, some of these were so clogged. I'm concerned that we're not doing enough on these ditches. And there was one, I was able to just step across. So I thought it was full of weeds or vegetation. So I'm just concerned.
Shadow Bend Park?
No, this is
That one's bad too.
between, just east of the high school off
Okay.
of Research Forest. And I rode way back in there on my bicycle. And some of the ditch is very deep. If I'd gone in, I couldn't have gotten out. But then there were, like I say, I stepped over it. So I'm just wondering if we can have something on a future meeting. I don't know if we're doing enough. I don't know enough to seriously comment.
We like the ones that don't have the water, so we can mow the
Sure.
vegetation. Ones that have water, we just mow to the water's edge, obviously.
Right.
But the ones that are dried up, like during a drought, we'd even mow all the way to the bottom.
Well, because this had water in it, you know, and we're in this drought, so there were weeds growing up through the water. And then the super deep ones, it was stagnant water. And my first thought was, what about mosquitoes? And the water wasn't moving at all. So I'm just concerned about all that.
Yeah, the good news is we've had, where John used to work, John Geiger, the new Bob Daly, we had them test all the ditches. And what they found, and for mosquito larvae and so forth, because there was West Nile, kind of a big thing. So they did that for several years. And what they found was that the tadpoles, and the turtles, and the fish, minnows, stuff, they virtually found zero mosquito larvae in any of that standing water. Yeah,
Because I did see 2 birds.
yeah,
So there must have been something to attract them.
yeah, minnows.
You know, you bringing that up reminds, I got a call from a Mud 60 constituent, and I told him to go to his mud. But
No, she calls you.
they do call me, and I'm kind of busy, but this guy is special because he's a hydrologist, and he came to my house one time, and he taught me what the beat the peak loophole was. And I really like this guy. And so his comment was, you know, I was going down Lake Woodlands, and it was similar to Mr. Unland's comment tonight. I guess I don't get out much, but NOAC apparently did some roadside ditch cleaning. And that's the same thing that Peter, my Mud 60 friend must have seen. And he said the county does a good job. He's disappointed in the mud drainage ditches. So since we're on discuss matters for placement on a future agenda, I'd like us to do a deeper dive so that we understand which ditches are owned by SJRA, which ditches are ours. When was the last time we desilted them? Because after Peter talked, my Mud 60 friend talked to me, I talked to a Mud 36 director who did do a special project where he dredged it, or didn't do it himself, but Mud 36 paid to have their drainage ditches improved. And they spent $600,000 on that project. So I'd like us to do a deep dive on our drainage ditches. I believe my Mud 60 friend, he is a hydrologist, he says we've really got obvious silt buildup in our drainage ditches. So if we could do an education thing and ask you questions about it for the next agenda for September we're in now, that'd be great.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, anything else? We're adjourned.
Yep.